Hello, sparkly ones. My name's Sam and welcome to my channel, So Let's Sparkle with Sam. And today it is freezing. So I'm not wearing anything particularly, I'm wearing some things me made, but you can't see them. Apart from this one, so I've got my little jersey snood, and if you want to find out how to make your own one of these, I have got a blog post on my website, which is soletsparkle.com, if you want to go and take a look at how to make yourself one of these. It's just made out of scraps, so it's got lovely patterned jersey one side and plain on the other, but you can make it with fleece, you can make it with anything warm that you've got left over, really. But I am chilly today, so I have got that on, and then I've got a thrifted jumper, and I've just got some ready to wear jeans on because I'm just trying to keep warm. So the reason I thought I'd pop on today is that I am off on a sewing retreat this weekend. I am going on a sewing retreat with some lovely sewing friends, and hopefully to make some new friends too, because there's some people that are going that I don't know, which is very exciting. And I thought I would show you what I put in my caddy when I go on a sewing retreat, because lots of people have asked me the questions. So the caddy that I'm referring to is this, which is, the pattern is the Maker's Caddy by Adam Sews. And as you can see, I've already started packing it up. And I thought we'd just go through it item by item and let you know what's in my caddy. Do you fancy that? Let's do it. So I do sewing tutorials, I do sewing chats, I do sewing vlogs, I do sewing blogs. I have a little sparkly studio here where I do sewing lessons, and I also have a little online shop. And if you would like to be part of that, then don't forget to pop and give me a little thumbs up. Hype if you like. Not quite sure what hype is, but if you fancy doing that, I'd appreciate it. And give me a subscribe if you haven't already. So first things first, the first thing that is in my sewing caddy, well actually on my sewing caddy, is this. So it is a little squeezy bottle of hand sanitizer, and it's got a little kind of clip on, and then that just clips onto the handles, because I don't know about you, but you know, sewing can be really messy. If you're using basting glue, if you're using denim, sometimes you get that bleeding into your hands. Sometimes just touching machines and, you know, kind of handling stuff. And, you know, if you're making something for somebody, or even if you're making it for yourself, don't forget to love yourselves, folks. You know, you want that love in it. You don't want grim in it, do you? So hand sanitizer, take that everywhere with me. And because the caddy is such that it's got these little handles in, these are great. And you can just hook it on, and then you never lose it then. So that sounds like, you know, maybe not the most essential thing to have in your caddy, but for me, it is. So I'm just going to literally dive in, no particular order. So first things first is I've got one of my little space capsules. So it's just a little fabric basket. I put this in my caddy because then I can put this on my sewing table, and then I'm not a messy person then, because any of my bits and pieces throughout the day I can just shove into this, any scraps that I've got, any threads that I've got, anything I need, and then at the end of the day I can take it away and sort it out. And then I put in here my little Mr. Clippy pincushion. So this pincushion has got little flaps on. Again, I have got a tutorial for this on my website, and you can put the little clips on the flap, and then you've got your pins in this bit here. It's a weighted pincushion, so if you put it on your table, it doesn't move. And because it's got pins and clips and things in, I put that inside my space capsule fabric basket, and then that keeps it all nice and safe in my caddy. So when I go into my caddy, obviously this will come out as soon as I get to a retreat, but when I go into it, I'm not putting my hands against pins or anything like that. So that's exciting. Marking pens. Obviously marking pens are really important. So I've got two marking pencils. I love my orange one. I tend to use, I don't know, orange seems to show up on a lot of fabrics that I use. I sew with a lot of black and navy blue, so orange shows up really nice. I've got a white, and then I also have my, let me see, I also have my friction pen, my black friction pen as well. So I've got a choice of marking pens. The other thing that always comes with me, well, two things, because they kind of come as a pair, is my Prim fray check and my button chisel. So my buttonhole chisel. Wouldn't it be great if you could just press and sew your button on? That'd be good, wouldn't it? But no. So fray check is once you've done your buttonholes, but before you've cut them, you put fray check on. Now, this may be controversial because I've had this conversation with people, and apparently I do it in a different way to other people. This is the way I've always done it. So I put fray check on the top of the buttonhole, I let it dry, and then I turn it over and put fray check on the bottom of the buttonhole, and I let it dry, and then and you get a nice satisfying crunch when you put that through. And I always get a nice kind of hard set buttonhole. Very, very handy. The other thing kind of goes hand in hand with the hand sanitizer. I've got a little tube of hand cream. Now, my family are always very generous with me at Christmas, and I always get a little stocking, and they always fill it with these little tubes. I think I had 6 tubes last year in my stocking, and you can tell it is nearly Christmas time because this one is, yeah, I've only got a tiny bit left, but probably enough to do me through the retreat. But yeah, if your hands, sewing can be a bit drying on your hands. So I'll pop that in there. And then whenever they get a bit dry, I can give them a little bit of a moisturize, and I'm good to go. And you know, you're on a sewing retreat. You want to treat yourself, you know, it's supposed to be a nice thing. Next thing, seam gauge, Prim seam gauge. I know there's lots of different gauges you can buy. I really like this one. The main reason that I like this one is it doubles up as a ruler, a straight edge. It also is flexible, so it fits in, you know, some of the metal ones tend to not fit in my Caddy as well. Yeah, so always handy. Also, if you want to measure any angles and stuff, that's also on there. So it's a handy thing to have. Next thing is my pokey tools. So I always take a couple of these little pokey tools. I sell these on my shop. They come in packs of 2, which is really handy. They're made by Millwood, and they come in a really handy little pack. Actually, you can keep them with. But because I designed the Caddy myself, I actually designed it so it fits these in exactly. Couple of handy things just to point out. It has this little end on, which is exactly 1/4 of an inch. So you quilters out there are probably getting very excited about that, because that's really handy to have. You've also got a sharpish, roundish, pokey end. So let me just put it up against the white so you can see it. So it's great to use for pushing fabric through or pulling fabric out of your machine. You've got this little threading tool. I have got a short to show you how to use that to thread elastic and ribbon through. They're just really, really handy. To go alongside those, also available on my shop, and this is not meant to be an advert, but you know, are my unicorn tweezers. Never go anywhere without a pair of unicorn tweezers. And if you can, take 2, because I promise you, if someone hasn't got them and you lend them a pair of your unicorn tweezers, you will be a sewing room hero for the rest of your life, because they're just fantastic. They're so handy, particularly if you're threading overlockers. They literally come into their own. If you're trying to poke something through, if you're trying to pull something out, you know, super handy, always in my Caddy. So the next thing is scissors, skizzers or scissors. So I always take a pair of just plain old paper scissors, because you don't want to mess up your fabric scissors. I always take a little tiny neat pair of scissors. So just a little, this is my rainbow pair. And I always take a pair of snips, which I can't find in here, which I probably buried in the bottom. No, they're not. I also always take this pair. So this is a really neat pair of scissors, which folds up. Very handy. Again, it's always good to take a spare pair of scissors in case you need to be that sewing room hero again. And the other thing that I tend to take with me, particularly if I'm going on a retreat and I'm garment sewing, are my duck bill scissors, because these are fantastic for trimming seams. And I've got so used to using them now that I kind of can't do it without them. Absolutely love these. The other thing that I always pop in is just a plain old pencil. This pencil was gifted to me by my lovely friend Rachel, who's the French Seams. And because it feels like a festive time, I'm not going to go anywhere without my candy cane pencil. The other thing is a little yarn needle. So there's a little yarn needle in there. These are by Clover. I've got 3 in there. Great for if you want to re-thread through your overlocking threads, you know, when you're finishing off, or if you're taking any knitting with you. I mean, I'm not a knitter, but I do use these quite often, and they are very handy to have. And I like to have a big needle because I'm in my 50s. I find it hard to see sometimes, and a big eye in a needle is just handy. So yeah, the other thing that I take with me is my unpicker. I always put it in this little felt case because, you know, you don't want to stab yourself with that. And I always take 2. So I've always got 2 unpicks in my caddy. The other thing that I've always got in here are these. Now, these are just so fantastic. They're a little pair of locking pliers. Now, if you do a lot of crafty makes like me, particularly if you make things like hair scrunchies, these are brilliant. Have you ever put some elastic through something, through a waistband, through a scrunchie, and then it's pinged? You know, like the, I don't know, the safety pin or the clip that you've put on the end is pinged off, and it's kind of shot through, and you think, oh God, I've got to pull that all out and do it all again. No, you haven't. Not if you've got a pair of these. These are great. They've got a really thin end. You can push it right in. You can feel with your fingers the elastic, and then you can just hook it onto the elastic, lock it in and pull it out. I'm not kidding you guys. These have saved my life more times than I can tell you about. These come everywhere with me. Next thing, again, a bit of a lifesaver. Again, this is available on my shop, is a little tube of basting glue. This one is just great because it's pretty. It comes with a lid on. It's got the glue inside, great for if you're inserting zips, labels, anything really, just something to hold it in place. I do a lot of applique. I use it for that as well. Really, really handy. The other thing that's always with me is my little mini rotary cutter, and I have got a mini rotary mat as well that goes in the bottom of my caddy. So nice and handy. I also always take some tapes with me. So I've got the interfacing tape that you put on necklines and collars and shoulder seams, and then mending tape, which is, you know, just in case you get that whoopsie. So always handy. And again, I've designed my caddy so I've got a little pocket that fits those in exactly. The other thing that always comes with me, let's get this out, is elastic. I obviously take my project bags with all my projects in, and if my project does need elastic, then, you know, that's great. But this kind of elastic comes in really handy. So you might have made a dress or something like that, and you find it's a bit big at the back, or it's got something's not quite right. Elastic solves 1,000 problems. So again, thinking back to being that sewing room hero, always put a bit of elastic in your caddy. You never know when someone or you might need it. So always in there. Tacking thread. I know this is a bit of an old school thing. People think you perhaps don't need tacking thread. I love to use it. It's great for tailor's tacks and any other mending bits and pieces that you might need to do, which brings me on to hand sewing needles. So I always put some hand sewing needles in. I like these little pebble ones because obviously it keeps it all safe inside, and, you know, they're not going to go anywhere. But I also like Prim do these little flat flat, what do you call them, containers, and these are great for needles at all, and they come with this thing that protects them on top, so keeps everything nice and safe inside. We're nearly at the end, folks. Washi tape. Washi tape comes with me everywhere, and it's always in my caddy. Also glue. Good old Gutermann fabric glue. You never know when you might need some permanent glue. Things go wrong. Always important. The other thing that always comes with me everywhere is my tape measure, and my tape measure, I can't show it to you unless I lift my caddy up, because it, again, like my hand sanitizer, it is always clipped on to my caddy because I don't want to lose it. And I also put one of my stickers on, so if it does go awry, it always, you know, it's like a boomerang because it's got my sticker on. Everyone knows it's mine. The other thing that goes in here is a roll of stickers. So I use these rolls of stickers for everything, for labelling my pattern pieces, or if I'm using fabric that I'm not sure about right sides or wrong sides, so I always take those with me. My good old trusty ironing cloth. Again, I love an ironing cloth, and you never know when that might come in handy. We're nearly at the end, folks. We're nearly there. We're nearly there. Magic seam wand. When you're at a sewing social or a sewing retreat, you might be a long way away from the ironing board. You never know, you know, where you're sitting. And sometimes, although, and I am going to say this, pressing makes things pretty, it is sometimes really important to use an iron. Sometimes you just ain't got time for that. So this is brilliant. It will just press those seams nice and flat in your caddy, job done. And I always take my little 2.5-inch ruler with me. Again, a bit like the seam guide, it kind of does the same thing and is nice and handy if you want to do a quick boxed corner. Now, what else have I got in here? Well, the final things are in the end pockets. So they're things that I like to kind of squirrel away. And these are spare needles. So I always take a pack of jersey needles, a pack of universal in different sizes, and a pack of Microtex needles. And again, if someone else has forgotten them, you just become the hero of the sewing room, and that is always a good thing, is it not? Another thing in there is my little thimble. I put it in that little pocket because that can very easily go missing. And then lastly, but by no means least, is I always take some packets of my labels. Now, these are available on my website because if someone forgets a label, then I'm always there to the rescue. And it's lovely to have a handmade label in your makes, particularly a handmade label that makes you think of someone that was there, because, you know, sewing retreats are fun. Now, that is it, folks. A completely empty caddy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put everything back in, I'm going to pack it up, and I'm going to have a lovely time on my sewing retreat. I hope you found that useful. Don't forget to sparkle. I'll see you again really soon. Bye for now.